Hey, I'm Sarah, and this is the Goddess in Training podcast. This isn't about being perfect or polished or having it all figured out. This is about what happens when you actually start listening to your body, your intuition, your patterns, your truth. I'm asking big questions and having real conversations, sometimes messy and sometimes magical, with people who've lived through it, grown through it, and still don't have all the answers. If you've ever doubted yourself, betrayed your gut, or wondered if you're the only one, you're not. Let's talk about it. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Goddess in Training. Today's conversation is one I've been genuinely excited to share because we're diving into a topic that is both deeply personal and deeply political: women's sexuality in midlife. I'm joined by Sarah Nelson, the writer behind Sexual Empowerment in Midlife on Substack. Sarah is a former global researcher who reinvented herself after a layoff and followed her curiosity straight into one of the most under-researched, misunderstood, and quietly transformative aspects of women's lives: sex. What I love about Sarah's work is that it's not performative, it's not shock value. It's research-backed, story-rich, and rooted in real conversations with real women navigating perimenopause, long-term relationships, open relationships, healing, agency, consent, jealousy, porn, transcendence, all of it. And yes, we start with squirting, because why not begin at the mystery? But what unfolds is so much bigger than any one sexual act. We talk about fear, about being the good girl, about compartmentalizing parts of ourselves, about the mind-body disconnect so many of us were trained into, about healing, not because we're broken, but because we get to reclaim ourselves. We talk about BDSM, consent, menopause, porn, jealousy, energy exchange, and the transcendent nature of sex, the kind that changes how you move through the world. This conversation is honest, nuanced, and at times surprising. It's about sexuality not as performance or identity, but as integration. If you've ever wondered how your sexual story connects to your confidence, your intuition, your agency, or your evolution, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hi, welcome back to another episode of Goddess in Training. I'm here today with my friend Sarah Nelson, and Sarah and I know each other from past lives, and now we have both found ourselves reinventing ourselves in midlife on Substack. And I love Sarah's Substack so much. It's called Sexual Empowerment in Midlife. Sarah, I want to hear about how you got to where you are today, but I want to jump right into the fun stuff because today I read your essay about squirting and I learned so much. And I am not unfamiliar to squirting, and it's something that I have researched myself. And I found myself reading your article and I'm like, what, really? And so dive into that topic a little bit. It's a big mystery and it really shouldn't be.
Yeah, absolutely. What I do on Substack is I am curious about something and I'm like, I bet other people are too. And then what I've found is amazing is how much scientific research has been done on these things. And, in this age where science is under threat in some ways, I love having the opportunity to push forward all this research that's been done. And of course, it is true that women's sexuality is vastly under-researched and a lot has been done. Somebody actually asked me about squirting. Anyone can give me topics. And somebody was like, I want to know about squirting. And I was like, good idea. 40% of women have squirted. And most of those women wonder where it comes from. So do you know where it comes from? It does come from our bladders, but it is not pee. It actually, and I think this is crazy, if you empty your bladder before sex, your bladder will spontaneously fill, if you're a squirter, will spontaneously fill, and then that's what comes out. And that's what squirting is.
So amazing. And it totally tracks with my human experience. Like, oh, that makes total sense. So tell me how you got to where you are today. You've been a researcher your entire career. And so why now sex?
So I was a researcher, but I was not a researcher on this at all. And I led these big global teams, which was super exciting. But I always found that what I liked best about that work was coaching and developing the team one-on-one. A couple of years ago, I got laid off. And I thought, okay, what do I really want to be doing? I got this idea that what I wanted to do was interview women about how they got in touch with their sexuality. And that had to do with my own journey. I got in touch with myself sexually in my 40s, and I was shocked how much it impacted how I interact with the world, not just sexually, but how much it made me more comfortable with who I am just as an everyday person and how I am and professionally and with friends. And I also realized all the expectations that I was putting on myself that didn't have to do with my value system, that had to do with what living in the society that we live in teaches you about how you're supposed to behave. So I wanted to know other women's experiences of that. And I started talking to women, and I just got this overwhelming response from all these women. And at the same time, I started digging into the scientific literature because I thought, I wonder whether anyone's researched these things that these women are talking about. And then I just found so much stuff that I thought, I need to share this. I need to do something with this. And so I have built this new career around writing and sharing this information, but also in coaching and helping people with their sex lives and their relationships.
So, how did you start approaching women to have these interviews, and how many total interviews have you had?
I focused on women who were kind of in this midlife period, going through perimenopause. So, women between the ages of 40 and 55. I interviewed more women than that, younger and older. But total in that age group, I interviewed about 50 plus, between 50 and 60. I still do interview women when they come to me, but now I look for stories that I haven't heard before. I reached out to everyone in my life. I reached out to, that old friend from high school I haven't been in touch with, and I talked to neighbors and whatever. And I just asked everybody, do you know anyone who might want to talk to me about how they got in touch with their sexuality? And some people would
Huh.
say, I totally know the person for you. And sometimes I'd interview someone and they'd give me somebody else. And it just went like that.
We're in this time period of great awakening, I think, where I am seeing women wanting to talk about sex more and feeling empowered to talk about sex more. And like you said about your own experience, realizing how connected sex is to who we are essentially as women. What kinds of through lines have you seen in the interviews that you've conducted?
I mean, that's a huge one. It's this sort of like sex is part of who we are. And it's so drilled into us that it's something that you keep in a box in a bedroom and you close the door, that we don't think about the fact that these are actually parts of our body. And if we are mentally disconnected from them, we're not living life with our whole self. And it's not that I walk around throwing my sexuality into everybody's face, but when I feel totally connected to my body, I'm more relaxed, I'm happier, I'm more confident. And over, the women that I talked to had versions of that story, had some moment where they realized something, whether that's because they got out of a relationship or they got into a relationship or they had a desire to revive the relationship they were in, or they had no relationship and they wanted a better relationship with themselves. But that was the through line, is I got in touch with who I was sexually, and then I felt more confident at work, or I decided to make this change in my life that I hadn't wanted to make before. I was too scared. And one woman told me, and I love this, she said she felt as if her body was a puzzle and the pieces for her breasts and her vagina weren't there. And when she learned who she was sexually, she felt like those puzzle pieces went back in and she was a complete person.
Wow. Wow. What struck me is what you said about being scared. And I think in so many of the stories that you tell on Substack and from the interviews with women is that there is this connection between our bodies and fear and sex. And so many women in midlife have this transformation where those puzzle pieces start fitting together and then the fear kind of dissolves in a lot of ways that then empowers us to be confident and do the things in all different parts of our lives. What role has fear played in your life?
Never had any fear. Um, I was the good girl, right? I wanted to do the right thing. I also was very sexual from a very young age. And I very much compartmentalized that. I said, good girls don't have sex. They don't. Good girls have one partner, really. And you can have like a few more than that, but it should only be in the service of finding that one partner. So I was very afraid to break the mold. I didn't want to stand out in any way, but in my head, I was different from everybody else, and only I knew it. And I think that I held myself back from a lot of things that I wanted to do because they were going to put me on the spot, or they were going to make people make comments that I wasn't going to know how to respond to. They were going to make my mother upset, and then they were going to make my husband upset. Not that, anyone's going to come after me with a knife, but that I'd rock the boat, and I didn't want to rock the boat.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of getting more in touch with myself and who I am has been about realizing that I have the strength inside me to handle those situations. They will. It's not like I was wrong that people would make comments or that these things would happen. What I was wrong about was that I couldn't handle it.
So many of us have those exact same experiences. So, in what different ways have women had that aha moment? The women that you've spoken to, like, I think that it most likely runs the gamut. And for me personally, I don't think it was one specific moment. And I've never had any shame. Well, so I hesitate because I want to say that I've never had shame around sex, but definitely when I was young, I did. Because you know, like most families, we didn't talk about sex and it was just kind of a mystery. But very quickly, I've just kind of always been a, like, fuck it person. I'm going to do what I want to do. And became very sexually free. In most of my life with open relationships and in different sexual settings. And now I found myself back into monogamy and very, very happy being monogamous. But so because of my own life experience, I can think of all of these moments that I've had aha moments that could be aha moments. Are there any commonalities between those aha moments that women have?
Really, no. And I think I thought that there would be. I thought there would be
Yeah.
more of that. But like I was saying, that women seem to have these moments in all different situations. Definitely something that I noticed is I always posed the same question up front, and that was, tell me how you took control of your sexuality. Start wherever you think is the beginning. And I loved seeing where they thought the beginning was. Some of them, the beginning was 5 years ago, and some of them, the beginning was when they were 2. And maybe not 2, 5. And there was kind of a cohort of good girls. And then there was a cohort of women who were like, I've always had control, sort of like what you're saying. And then they would pause and they'd say, well, but actually there were these times when I thought that I was really in control of my sexuality. But in retrospect, I realized that I wasn't. And something that I realized is that our society has such fucked up views about sex that you can't really be in control of your sexuality if you were socialized as a girl and a woman. You can be free and you can do a lot of liberated things, but in effect, you're saying, well, I'm not going to do those things they're telling me to do. You're not saying, I'm just going to do whatever I want in a vacuum. You're not saying, what do I want? I'm going to be in touch with what I want. I'm going to be fully realized as a human being. And, partially it's age too, right? When you're young, you just don't know. But I find it interesting that even women who said, like, I've always had sex with whoever I wanted, and I've done all these things and da-da-da-da, they still saw a moment where and this is, of course, a self-selected group, right? Like, I looked for women who thought they had taken control of their sexuality. So there are lots of women out there who don't think that and didn't volunteer.
Right.
But of the ones who volunteered, they all had sort of had this moment where they thought, I thought things were okay, or maybe I didn't think things were okay, but I didn't know how to change it. And now I have more agency. I have more control. I have more conscious choices that I'm making. And so the theme is not everybody hits this point in perimenopause, or everybody hits this point if they've been married a certain amount of time or whatever. It's that if you do hit the point, what that point is saying, I thought I was in touch with myself, but in many ways I wasn't. And now I'm going to be. And now I'm going to act in line with my own values. And those values include sex and are not only defined by sex.
Think about these things more now in the context of my own life, but also I have a teenage daughter and how to help guide her in her sexuality. And it's hard. It is so hard. And maybe this journey of our sexuality is part of the point, in that there's no textbook and there shouldn't be a textbook to it. And that kind of like when you're doing a puzzle, some people start with the edges and some people start with the middle and some people have a block here and a block there. I love that analogy with our bodies because I talk about intuition a lot on this podcast, and getting in touch with your intuition. At the same time, you have to have that embodiment. You have to be able to feel things in your body. And sex is such a huge part of that. Have you heard women reflect, or have you experienced yourself the mind-body connection in relationship to sex and how that evolves?
Yeah, it's so important. Sex is a bodily activity, and we are trained in life to be in our heads, to not be in our
Right.
And I mean, something I notice in myself is if I start to really get in my head, it's often because I'm trying to avoid a feeling in my body, a feeling that I don't like. If I start asking my partner lots and lots of questions, it's usually because I feel something in my body that I don't like and I want to avoid that feeling. So I'm going to get in my head and ask a lot of questions. As a coach, I'm trained in somatic techniques, which is, getting into your body, get out of your head, get into your body. And so my belief very much is that the more that you're in your head, the less you're going to be able to enjoy life because you're not interacting with everything from that place of yourself. A very strong theme in the interviews that I've done has been, it was the moment when I stopped overthinking that I was able to get in touch with what I really enjoy, what really gives me pleasure, with what my desires are. But that's an unlearning in itself from it's important to be intellectual. It's important to be smart. It's important to analyze things, go into therapy and talk your way out of your problems. And when we learn different obstacles and challenges to intimacy and to relationships and to sex, we usually don't learn them from a conversation we had. We usually learn them from actions in our body. And you can't unlearn what's in your body by talking your way out of it.
Yeah, because like when things are done to us against our will and then it lives in our bodies, you have to do that work. That's not just the talk therapy. You just need to learn how to feel things differently and process the bad things out, process the way that we've been harmed and where we haven't had agency out of our bodies.
You can talk about trauma in a lot of different ways, and horrible things have happened to people, but sometimes it's not that horrible, but it still lives in your body. And we all have things that we need to heal from. And another really fascinating thing that I've found through talking to women and also through the scientific literature that I've read is how much sex can help with healing and all of the ways that we can play out various scenarios through sex and use that to reprogram our minds and our bodies to see things differently. Thinking of healing not as something that you have to do because you're broken, as something that you get to do to have agency and take control of yourself. We could dig in on, the role of BDSM in that and things like that, but even just ordinary sex can do that because so much of sex is about, it's obviously what turns you on, and what turns you on is so tied to these almost childhood insecurities. I want to feel loved. I want to feel desired. I want to feel in control. I want to feel out of control. I want to feel taken care of. And when you get those things through great sex, you heal those parts of yourself.
And definitely, I was in the BDSM world for a long time and did a whole podcast with a therapist in that space and a friend who's still in the kink world. And I saw that time and time again and experienced that myself to some extent. And I didn't go into it thinking that I was healing something, but I had so many revelations about myself. And part of it had to do with putting myself in uncomfortable positions. And we learn so much in that discomfort. And I think that that happens so much, even with vanilla sex, regular sex. I think it's going outside of our comfort zone where we learn, like, "Oh, that's awesome." Or in our body, we have those distinct feelings. And that's how we can get in touch with what our body is feeling and how that translates into what we're thinking so well. The thing about BDSM that I've had conversations with folks about is what I saw, and part of the reason why I got out of it is so many people are in that space healing so many different things. And the consent lines are very, very blurry. It's very, very difficult to, when you're engaging with somebody else, know what their true intentions are. You can have the conversations, what you're looking for and what's okay and what's not okay. But I saw a lot of situations where there were some deeper things happening. And even the person who was healing didn't necessarily know what they were playing out. There was just a lack of self-awareness in a lot of situations. And so it was something that I became more aware of. And it's a difficult thing to teach people when you're going into that kind of space. Not that I'm discouraging anybody or any kind of warning, but I think that in all sexual situations, there's a level of risk involved too when you have that kind of discomfort. What have women said about consent, risk, those kinds of topics?
I actually was just writing a story yesterday and thought I should do my next research article on consent. That's the tabs that I have open on my computer. Consent is so interesting because I've been interviewing this cohort of women who are born in the 70s and early 80s. We see consent very differently. I think we were taught different things about consent then, especially women who date much younger men are like, "Oh my God, you're asking me if you can kiss me? Like, what are you doing?" We were taught no means no, right? And that was great. And it left open a lot of space for ambiguity and for, well, I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes, but now I feel uncomfortable with it, etc. In my research on BDSM, also that people have studied how many people who participate in BDSM ask for explicit consent. 90% of self-identified BDSM practitioners say that they have asked for explicit consent, and about half of them say that they almost always do. And one of the things that I love about the BDSM world is the lessons that it can teach anybody. Like, that's a pretty good thing to think about any sex, not just
Right.
BDSM. Doesn't matter if
Right.
someone's going to whip you or if they're just going to put their penis in you. Like, they
Right.
should have
Yes.
consent. And another thing that I love is a woman that I talked to who told me that she was in an ultra religious setting, what she called a high demand religion. She was Mormon. And when she got out of it, she felt like she had no ability to speak up for herself. In fact, she'd been taught not to speak up for herself. And she learned to speak up for herself through BDSM by being forced to say upfront what she wanted and being forced to reflect on it afterwards and talk about it. And she actually became a BDSM teacher, and then she became a sex therapist. So consent runs through all of this. And I think it's also a lot of the healing of trauma. I talked to another woman, I haven't written up her story yet, but she was a victim of sexual trauma, and she healed it through being in an open relationship. And for her, it was that control aspect of, you're not going to tell me who I'm going to sleep with. You're not going to tell me what I can and can't do. That gave her the agency to heal from what had happened to her. And again, that theme of separating it from who she is, right? You don't have to be a sexual abuse victim for the rest of your life. That doesn't have to be who you are. You can have experienced this thing and you can also have a life and you can have great sex and be happy about it and enjoy it. And it doesn't have to be re-traumatizing and it doesn't have to be twisted. I'm very intrigued by how we give consent, how we receive consent. Because honestly, when I'm with a younger man and he asks me if I can kiss him, I'm like, can we just get on with it? Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to ask me every step of the way.
Uh-huh.
I'm in your bed and I'm naked. You have my consent.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Kind of gets you into your logical brain again. That was my issue with consent and BDSM is that I couldn't relax and get into that meditative state, which is what I was there for, really, if I had to answer questions.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. As a coach, I actually don't ask a lot of questions because every time I do, I'm going to get you out of your body. It's very hard to say to someone, you just need to attune to your partner and know what they want because there's so much gray area there. That's not a very good legal situation to be in. But for ourselves, thinking about how can I be tuned into my partner? How can I be reading all of the signals, not just the words? And how can I communicate clearly and know that they are understanding it, whether that's verbal or not? And how can I build the trust that I need beforehand so that in the moment, I had a BDSM teacher say, so that you can be on a white, fluffy cloud and just enjoy it.
That's what it's about, really. So I know you've talked primarily with women, but I can imagine a lot of men are reading your essays and wondering, like, how do I help my partner or partners get to that white, fluffy cloud? Have you heard reflections from men about the things that you've written about?
Yeah, a lot, actually, the surprising amount. Women are socialized not to talk about sex. Men are socialized to have sex whenever they can, whether they want it or not. And so men are also very out of touch with what their desires are and what they truly want. And men are often put in a situation where they're expected to have sex and might not actually want it. And to shut down that part of themselves that might be saying that. And of course, to shut down all their emotions, which is a whole other thing that is thankfully one of the things women don't have to deal with, right? And I think that a lot of what I've written has really spoken to men in a parallel way. And I think some men just feel like they want validation for the caring that they have for the women that they're with and for their efforts to try to bring them pleasure and to try to get in touch with their partner's desires and how they can fulfill those things. I think that a lot of men have never had a space where they can talk about sex in a vulnerable way, not in a bragging kind of way. And they crave that. I mean, they want to know that they are normal, that their desires are normal, that their fantasies and their kinks are okay. And I actually really love working with men because it's this same set of societal shame around sex and how do you strip that away and get in touch with your own beliefs and your own values and your own desires.
Talk a little bit about porn and what people have said about porn. And I feel like so many things in this world, it's not completely good, not completely bad, and it has a role. What positive things have people reflected about porn?
Big thing that a lot of people struggle with is they're bored with their sex life, but they don't know what else to do. Porn gives you
Mm,
lots of ideas.
yeah.
It opens up
Infinite.
the Pandora's box of things that you might want to try. And as long as you can keep your head about it and know that what they are doing doesn't look the way it's going to look for you. So porn gives us a lot of ideas, a lot of things that we might want to try, either try in real life or try fantasizing about. And fantasy doesn't have to be playing out a porn movie in your head. It could be having a few fleeting thoughts or just a feeling. But watching porn can feed that. It can also take away some of the shame around some things that you might be interested in. Watching other people enact something that you don't feel comfortable enacting is a way to heal yourself in many ways. And my belief is that there are no bad, evil desires. What's bad and evil is if you act on certain things. We're in a time right now where we've learned that people have acted on things that were not okay. But we can't control what we desire. And if you desire something that is absolutely not okay, finding ways to manage that desire in a safe and consensual way is okay. And porn can do that. You may not want to actually go out and have sex with 5 of your neighbors. But if you watch a porn movie about somebody going out and having sex with 5 of their neighbors, that may satisfy you in the same way. And that's great.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. My experience of sex, so much of it is the energy exchange. And I think that one thing that I've seen happen with porn is that one partner can be so fixated on porn that the energy just gets pulled completely in that direction. And then have people talked about that, about the issue of possible like porn addiction and how that can be disruptive in a relationship?
Yeah, I've looked into this quite a bit, and I wrote an article about it that I didn't publish on Substack. It's on my website. I don't like the term addiction because it's such a loaded word, and it comes with all these associations about what you need to do about it and about what it means for you. And it's definitely true that you can watch so much porn that it inhibits intimacy with a real live person, maybe a person who you are in love with. It can also be so distracting that it takes you away from professional obligations or other life obligations. And those are real things. I think part of the solution is first taking away that shame. And this is part of why I don't like the word addiction, is because I think there's a huge amount of shame attached to the word addiction. And if you just take the one shame and you replace it with another, that doesn't help. Then thinking about, how does this feel in your body to watch porn, to want to watch porn, to not be able to watch porn when you want to watch porn, and using those feelings to be more in touch with yourself. Because I think one of the things about porn is that it is so stimulating for some people that it can wipe out whatever else is going on in your life. And sometimes what else is going on in your life doesn't really feel so good. Sometimes you don't really want to feel those feelings. Or if you're socialized as a man, you may have been taught that you can't feel those. You should not feel those feelings. And so what do I do with that? I'm starting to feel sad, or I'm starting to feel scared. I don't want to feel those feelings. How do I get rid of them? I'll just wipe it all out by watching a lot of. So being curious, thinking about what are the steps that lead up to my actions, and then can I get more in touch with how I feel? And then can I allow those feelings to have their cycle and to run through my body, and for my body to process them and let them go? I'm making it sound very easy, and it's not. It's not an easy problem.
Everything is a process. Yeah, it's so interesting. I was in the swinger world for a long time too, and you see the same kinds of trends with people. Like, there are some people who are there in that space as a complete avoidance of their lives and what's going on, and then there are people who are there for the connection, and maybe overtly or subliminally they're healing things, but to try to be more connected, more fulfilled, more energized. I found it to be completely energizing to be around and share energy in such an intimate way with so many different people. But at the same time, yeah, there are definitely people who are there to completely shut out the rest of the world, and not putting any judgment on that. That has its place too sometimes. But the place that I'm in right now, I've read a lot of things people talking about, and this comes up in religious contexts, like traditional religious contexts, and also comes up in the spiritual world about this idea that when you are intimate with somebody, they imprint on you in some way, and that energy exchange never fully goes away. And so you hear that in traditional Christian religions, but then also it's popping up in the more metaphysical, spiritual world where people are advising like sexual hygiene in the sense of being really careful about who you are intimate with. Do you have thoughts on that? And from the interviews that you've had with women?
There's energy exchange all the time. And there's a lot of energy exchange when you're vulnerable. And sex is vulnerable. In order to enjoy sex, you have to be vulnerable because when you orgasm, you are not able to run away from a lion, right? In that moment, you are totally vulnerable. You're allowing somebody else to take away your consciousness in a way, right?
Yeah.
And you're opening yourself up to them for good sex. You're also going to need to be very connected to your partner. And that means you have to open yourself up in a spiritual sense. We're always exchanging energy with everybody around us. We're always absorbing other people's energy. We're always giving out our own. And sex is one of those times. And so I think we all need to be conscious of the impact that other people's energy has on us, what we can do to let in the energy that we want to let in and not let in the energy that we don't want. I One of the things I think about is like a bubble around you, and you have a bubble around you. I have a bubble around me. And right now I'm letting you into my bubble. And I'm good with that right now. Sometimes I'm sitting next to someone who I don't want in my bubble. And can I feel the boundaries of my bubble? And can I keep that energy out? If it's already gotten in, can I let it out? And when we have sex with someone, it's just a part of that, right? I don't think it's more or less. I think it's part of this holistic energy sense.
Yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I cringe a little bit whenever I hear people say that, like, because I think it's kind of slut shaming in a way by saying like, you can't be with a lot of people because be careful, that energy is going to stick with you forever. You're letting them in this really intimate way. And I don't know. That's not my experience of life, but you're 100% right. I think that there are ways to practice maintaining your own energy and allowing the things in that you want to come in. And if something comes in that you don't like and that it's not with you forever. That's the thing that I think that people are trying to say that, well, you can't rid yourself of somebody's energy once it's there. And that I don't believe that at all.
Nothing's forever. I
um,
mean, nothing.
Yeah, and I am all for people experimenting in whatever way they feel like experimenting in a consensual way. Like I said before, I'm now back to this place of monogamy, which I never thought I would be monogamous again because I was way far in the other direction. I like swinger cruises and I don't know, I did all the things.
Awesome.
That's why I'm like, everybody should go and experiment whatever feels right. Do those things. Life is short and you learn so much by exposing yourself again to discomfort and to intensity and to feeling people's energy in that way. You learn so much about yourself and about other people. But I'm now in this place where I feel like sex has become more sacred in a way. And I don't say that with any judgment either, but where I'm playing more with the transcendent nature of sex. And I feel like I'm able to be more open and get to a different kind of mental state in the context of one partner. Have any women that you've talked to talked about the transcendent nature of sex?
Yes, definitely. I think there's different kinds of sex, right? There's the super hot, passionate sex. There's the super romantic and slow and gentle sex. And there's BDSM. There's sex that's very tuned in with nature and, sort of imagining yourself as a part of the earth. And I think the spiritual is another one. And we can move back and forth among these and we can have some of them one day and some of them another or with different people. But the the transcendental power of sex is something that a lot of people experience, and actually something that has been researched. There's this amazing book called Magnificent Sex, and transcendence is one of the 8 qualities that the researchers identified as part of great sex. Taking you to another place, taking you to another level of consciousness, bringing you a connection with your partner that you weren't experiencing before. And it may only be in that moment. It may not last forever, but that feeling that like I didn't know I could feel this. And I heard that a lot from the women that I interviewed. This sort of like, I thought I was having great sex, or I thought that I had a great relationship, and then I was with so-and-so and it was just different than I ever imagined. And a lot of times they can't articulate it. They don't know what to say about it. I can see it in them and I can feel it from them, and they grasp at words. And I have been lucky enough to have that as well. It's an amazing feeling, and it is very addictive too. Like you're very much like, why would I want to be in a relationship that isn't like this? Although interestingly, I also talked to women who had been in relationships like that and were like, you know what? It wasn't the right relationship for me. And now I'm with a guy who like, it's just so, and that's just fine for me. There's no one trajectory, which I think is really interesting. And, your experience with going from being in an open relationship to monogamy, I have heard those stories as well. There isn't like a steady progression towards better that is always in this direction. It's just different at different times and for different people.
Exactly. The journey for sure. So Sarah, thank you so much. And what's coming up next for you? What are you excited about I guess we're now in February, but the year is still blossoming.
I'm excited to talk to more people. I'm excited to support more people in their journeys. I'm excited to write more about more things that I am curious about. You mentioned consent. That's on my list.
I'll tell you this story. This woman was talking about menopause, and I'm sure you've heard this too, where she said when women enter menopause, they become invisible. And she said this with such seriousness. It has stuck with me. This was, she really truly believed that when she hit menopause, she became completely invisible to men. And it just saddened me so much that people really believe this and feel that way. And my response to her was, I have been on swinger cruises and with 80-plus-year-old women, and they are not invisible. Let me tell you.
I've definitely heard that. When I interviewed older women, they said it to me. And, I turned 50 this year, and I will let you know. But I do think, the fact that women don't get roles in Hollywood, the fact that their careers kind of max out at a younger age than men. So unfortunately, I do think there probably is some truth to it, and it doesn't have to define you. And there are ways to overcome it. And so much of it is a mindset, right? Oh, a topic that I think about all the time, and I forget that I haven't actually written that much about, is the biology of what happens during perimenopause and menopause that leads to positive things, that leads to things like saying, fuck it, I don't care anymore. That's actually a chemical change in your brain that makes your frontal cortex less connected to your amygdala. So you're less fight or flight and you're more at peace with the world. That's amazing. I can't wait.
Yeah, me too.
So that's like a whole set of things that I'm super excited to work on. Other things that I've been thinking about writing on are new relationship energy, and like, what is that? And like chemically, what's going on? And what do we know? And how long does it last? And what does it mean? I think a lot about jealousy. I'm also in an open relationship, and people say to me like, but don't you get jealous? And I'm like,
Yeah.
And so I think that's a fascinating topic, because our relationship with jealousy in our society is really shaming. And it's not only non-monogamous people who experience jealousy. And what can you do about it? There's been a lot of research on that. I would love to hear from your listeners more things that they wonder about, because it's so fun for me to. And the Squirting article actually was a reader recommendation. And And she was right.
All right. Well, let's flood Sarah's inbox on Substack with ideas. I think we all have a ton of ideas that we can pass your way. Sarah, thank you so much. This has been so fun to catch up, and maybe we can do a follow up at some point on some new topic.
Yeah, delve in on something. Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you for tuning in to Goddess in Training. I hope something in this episode stirred your knowing or softened your heart. If it spoke to you, share it with someone who needs it, or leave a review or comment to help others find us. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and subscribe to the channel. If you want to hear more conversations like this, please consider supporting Goddess in Training on Patreon. For more tools and offerings to deepen your intuition practice, visit goddessintraining.online. You can also join the Scroll of Seshat on Substack for twice-weekly stories of how I followed my intuition. The music for Goddess in Training is Madre Ayahuasca by Arkawa, and you can find more of his music in the link to his website in the show notes. Remember, your intuition is not a mystery, it's a memory. Keep listening.
Resplandor de fuego, estrellita, tabaco santo, fuerza de rapel, soplo de luz, soplo encantado, viajecito, bendición del cielo, fortaleza, tigrecito de la selva.